Finally, a look at a photographer's more than decade-long project documenting hope and despair in her hometown. Jeffrey Brown has that story.
Braddock, Pennsylvania, about 9 miles outside of Pittsburgh, a once thriving steel town of some 20,000, now down to 1/10 of that, and captured through the very personal lens of Latoya Ruby Frazier, the 32-year-old winner of one of this year's MacArthur Fellowships.
I see myself as an artist and a citizen that's documenting and telling the story and building the archive of working class families facing all this change that's happening, because it has to be documented.
These days, Frazier teaches and lives in Chicago, where we talk to her. But her true home, her childhood home, is the one found in her work. It's a project titled The Notion of Family that she began more than a decade ago, documenting 3 generations of African-American women in a particular time and place.
My grandmother, who grew up there in the 30s when Braddock was prosperous in a city itself that everyone came to my mother growing up there in the 60s during segregation and white flight and the beginning of the collapse of the steel industry, to myself growing up there in the 80s and 90s when the factories were already dismantled and the war on drugs kind of hit its peak.
Educator and photographer Louis Hine used his camera for social reform. Photographers from the Farm Security Administration documented the poverty of the Depression, the pioneering work of Gordon Parks in the 1940s and 50s. Frazier sees herself working in this tradition, first and foremost, though, as a visual artist.
So the art comes in with how it's crafted, how it's made, the material, me understanding the history. Because the images, they're not purely documents. If you look at them, first and foremost, the fact that I appear on the other side of the camera lets you know that this is contemporary art, because now I'm performing and doing gestures in front of the camera to create
You're part of the scene.
The narrative and the scene, yes.
But are they posed photographs?
They sit in between staged and documentation. If we think about the image, Grandma Ruby and Me, 2005, I know her routine. I know she'll get up, she'll have her Folgers cup of coffee, she'll smoke her Pall Mall cigarettes, she'll clean her dolls. So looking at my grandmother one day, I said, well, Grandma, could you redo my hair the way you used to when I was a child? So, I'm in my 20s in this image. So I come and I sit next to her while she's rearranging her dolls, and then we both quietly happen to look over our shoulders, and the cable release is running behind me to the camera, and I press the cable release. And so that's how it sits between documentation and actual staged portraiture.
In 2013, Frazier flew in a helicopter above Braddock to expand her view of the town.
I just knew I had to shoot this so the family could see what was happening to their property.
And to capture the plight of one particular home owned by the Bund family in the neighborhood known as the Bottom, right near the old plant. It's now surrounded by bundles of crushed rubber tires.
And what's interesting is at one point, anyone who immigrated or migrated to work in this factory lived exactly these 2 blocks.
Really?
And this is really important to me because it's not about being black or white. This was our rites of passage. So it didn't matter if you came from Germany, Croatia, Italy, Africa, North Carolina, or South Carolina. We all lived here together. And over the years, these were all through eminent domain taken because people died from terminal illnesses, couldn't upstand or keep their homes. And then this family, the Bund family, decided that they didn't want to move.
We were taught how the pioneers went into the West.
In more recent years, a new story of Braddock has been told, one of grit and revival.
A long time ago, things got broken here.
Levi's even used the city in a 2010 ad campaign called Ready for Work.
Maybe the world breaks on purpose, so we can have work to do.
Frazier isn't buying it.
Out of concern for this narrative and what I saw as propaganda, I started to make the portraits to counterbalance this narrative, right? It's not an empty land, it's not a frontier, Like, people actually live here and have been dealing with the environmental crisis for decades.
She points to government policies and corporate decisions like the closing of the main hospital, which had served many in the town, including Fraser's own family, who say they suffer from environment-related illnesses. The fight over the hospital was captured in a 2012 documentary by Tony Buba, who's been filming life in Braddock since the 1970s. The protest became another point of Fraser's own mix of art and activism.
So here I'm talking about the history of protest.
Taken all together, it's a complicated picture. Fraser wants us not to forget those who continue to struggle amid the changes.
I'm not saying that it's a dying town. I'm saying that we survived. Like, look at all of the damage, all the abuse we've endured, and we're still steadfast and existing. So for me, it's a triumphant story. It's really a testimony. We're not dying.
Even though it looks, much of it looks so depressed and depressing type scenes.
But look at me in the flesh right now in front of you.
Yes.
I'm not that girl.
And she plans to use the money from the MacArthur grant, $625,000 over 5 years, to continue to document and complicate our picture of Braddock, Pennsylvania. I'm Jeffrey Brown for the PBS NewsHour.